Welcome everyone, you're welcome to the Property Pod. This is a place where we talk all things real estate and properties, and today we're going to be talking about housing. Our housing is one of the basic necessities of man next to food and clothing. And the housing situation in Nigeria is something that has been in dire need, and today we're going to be talking about affordable housing. In an era where a lot of real estate companies focus on just providing houses, we want to talk about providing houses for the low income and middle income class. So today I have with me a special guest who is going to be discussing this topic with me. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. So you're welcome, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, David. My name is Adi Dodson. I'm an architect by profession. I'm also a project manager. I've been in the build industry for over 10, 12 years, actively participating in the building industry for that long. We've been able, over the years, we've done quite a number of projects for both low income earners, for middle income earners, and high income earners. So we've really been involved in projects, regardless of your pool of income.
Okay. Right. So thank you. We're just going to dive right in. So seeing the situation in Nigeria, you're a veteran when it comes to housing provision in Nigeria. You're an architect, so you're someone that is in the situation. I would like to ask, what is for viewers, what's the difference between normal conventional housing and affordable housing?
Affordable housing, it's all encompassing. Now, for people that actually rent properties, you can also call that affordable housing. It doesn't have to be owned by them. So long as they can actually afford it, it's affordable housing. So affordable housing might not necessarily be for low income earners. It can also be for them, because affordability means it's something that, regardless of your income group, is something you can afford. So affordable housing cuts across all stratas. It could be, it just depends on what you have. So that's basically everything about affordable housing. But I believe that what we are talking about, basically, and the focus of this discussion is for the low income earners. Now, over the years, and in some parts of the world, we've looked at the major things that could actually bring the cost of housing a little bit down for the low income earners, or in fact down. Now, we looked at the issue of sustainabilities, trying renewables, using materials that are easy to get for building, so that those, in building, if you take away haulage cost, that's the cost of moving things around, transportation and the likes, you reduce a considerable fraction of your expenditure. Now, if you can actually take that out, you also reduce the cost of housing you get. So I would say that, going back to the question, affordable housing, what are the things that we can do in Nigeria? We can leverage our local materials. All houses do not have to be concrete. They don't have to just look imported. We don't need to have foreign tiles, foreign finishings, foreign furnishing. But we can actually look at what is peculiar to us and make something out of it. I was involved in a project in Makoko. We were trying to design an health center. Makoko is one of the, should I call it, the celebrated slum now,
Yes,
or one of the most popular slums in Lagos. Now, we're looking at, in fact, the first day I went into that slum was quite shocking and a humbling experience. You can't move, you can't get to where you stay with your car. You probably need to park your car somewhere. You use canoe where you need to use canoe, and if you are not living on water, but you're still within the slum, probably most times you make use of your food. Now, because of the peculiarities of that place, we looked at what is actually affordable to them. Now, in that particular community, what is affordable is wood, not concrete, not brick and mortar and things like that. But you see, because of the availability of wood, it has reduced the cost of quite a number of things. Also, specialized labor in that areas, because a lot of them actually understand wood. It has also been able to reduce to a large extent some fraction of the labor cost. So while in the process of design, these were things that were factored into, and then we decided that the best thing to use, even though if you are looking at it from the angle or the prism of sustainability, we might not actually, sustainable generation do not want us to use wood, because if you're going to use wood, you should still plant trees. So the idea is you don't want to use wood and not plant trees, so you don't want deforestation, but that's just by the way. Now, what we discovered is using wood to a large extent was able to solve their peculiar needs. However, we also have some issues in the sense that because of the peculiarity of that locations, one of the best ways to solve the housing crisis is to build vertically and not horizontally, meaning that you have lots of condominium, you have lots of high-rise along that area. Now, having a lot of high-rise means, you can't use wood for a lot of high-rise buildings. But, well, that's just talking on the larger scale. However, on the lower scale and looking at it from the affordable angle, so we did that of wood. Now, coming to the north, you will discover that wood is not actually the major or the predominant housing material we have in the north. So if we look at the complexities of the area we find ourselves, we can look at readily available housing material that we can easily use, and it will reduce cost.
So, if I understand you very well, you're saying for us to achieve, or an example of affordable housing, or for us to achieve affordable housing, we should source domestic materials.
Yes.
Try and reduce transportation costs and logistic costs and all that. So based on all these things now, and Nigeria is such a big place that each space has its own peculiarities. Now, what is your own take on the overview of affordable housing generally? Like, how do you think government is integrating this affordable housing in their scheme? Like, because government has been doing housing provision schemes for a very long time now, but it seems like we've been doing the same thing over and over again. So, an overview of affordable housing right now, what do you think the situation is?
I feel that looking at it from the middle class perspective, down to the lower class, got the ideas of having a national housing fund, of mortgage financing, and the others are actually very excellent. However, the problem is accessibility. Just very few people actually access this fund. Therefore, if government can break the bureaucracy of accessibility to these things, people will be able to afford houses. Now, there's also a concept that I know of. You can rent to home. When you pay some fraction of money, you can rent for 30 years, and after 30 years, it becomes yours. So, government also needs to be able, because now, it also brings up, you look at private developers. One of their driving goals, apart from providing housing for people, is profit. And nobody will want to tie down his funds for quite a number of years, for 30 years before he's able to break even. Nobody, even a bank, will not loan you credit for 30 years. However, because government is continual, government can take up such risk. So if government can make accessibility to mortgage finance very, very accessible, then you will discover that we'll have more people owning their homes, having places where they can reside, having places where they can afford, without necessarily breaking the bank.
Okay. Coming to that, government has done a lot of public-private partnerships. Local Goma is an example. Most of the houses there are mass housing
Yes.
estates. Now, it's an example of government trying to provide houses. What they did there is they partnered with private developers, provided them land and everything. Now, after providing them this land, the developers built, these houses are no longer affordable. Now, in partnering with private institutions, do you think it is actually possible for us to achieve affordable housing when the private sector is involved?
The private sector needs to be involved, definitely, because government cannot be the. If you look at everything that government has actually been the alpha and omega, we discovered after a while government also takes on it and they prefer that the private sector drives such.
But private sector, is driven by profitability. They want to know that okay, they are going to make a profit out of this. Now, if something is driven by profitability, I don't think they want to sell it at cost price, or they would want to, or out of the kindness of their hearts, they want to deliver the services without having anything in return. And I feel okay, it is that overlap now that makes a lot of these housing projects that after it's been completed, they become unaffordable, even though that was not the intention from the beginning.
I also think, like I said earlier, accessibility to credit, accessibility to loans, could also be a game changer in this. In what we are talking about. Now, take for instance, let's say my annual return is about 3 million naira yearly. Let's say, just for example. Now, and I also know that I need a house. I need a place to rest. I need a place where my family also can call their home. Now, I cannot afford the present cost price or the selling price of 65 million, of 75 million, or 80 million or thereabout. Now, I'm caught in a fix. So what do I do in that case? Government also needs to make sure that I can easily access credit. When I can access credit, I can pay for that credit over a period of time. There are lots of people that access secondary education, university education on credit, and they pay up after many years, and that system keeps repeating itself. So if we can have something like that in the housing sector, where people can easily access credit, this particular shortage of housing also will reduce. We'll have more people having their homes by themselves.
Okay. Now, I would like to take this from an architectural point of view. Now, we talked about when we went to Makoko and trying to build a hospital there and everything. So you had to consider the environmental variables and everything. Now, as an architect now, are there certain specifications or principles that guide affordable housing? Like when you're building a house to make it more affordable, are there different principles that guide affordable housing and different principles that guide building conventional houses for the normal price?
A conventional housing simply means it's more or less myself going to the supermarket and picking whatever I want. It is because that is what I want. Now, it's built based on my taste. But affordability means that it's something that I can, or maybe I'm having a problem with that affordability. Let me use low income housing because of the essence of our discussion. Now, when it comes to that low income housing, like we said earlier, one of the major things is materials. Look at the north, for example. You discover that if you look at the issue of housing, you discover that a lot of people were living in thatched houses, mud houses, and the likes then before the advent of cement, brick and mortar, and things like that. So if we are able to a large extent leverage on the materials, like I said earlier, the materials that we have, now the cost of building itself will reduce.
So you're saying, okay, for the house to be more affordable, we have to go back.
I'm not saying we have to go back to mud housing, but We have to take a little bit of what we have learned during the mud housing phase, during the Stone Age, and see how we can create something unique. It reminds me of the poem of David Diop. He was talking Young Africans Play. I don't know if you remember. Young Africans said, "Don't preserve my culture as a fine something like that to suit some white historians tale." He was saying that we should not abandon our local productivity, our local resources, because we want to Europeanize everything that we have. So we should also take a bit of, let's say, a bit of culture here, a bit of another there, that we can actually, with that we can create something unique. So we can take a bit of materials. We have a lot of laterites in the north. We have a lot of laterites in Nigeria. We can, instead of using blocks, cement, and the likes, we can also leverage on trying to build brick houses, because of the value chain, it will still take some time, but these are things that will eventually reduce the cost of housing in the long term, because the materials are just readily available.
But if in economics, principle of supply and demand, so if everybody is looking for, right now we're using cement, mortar, and everything, that's what we do now, and it makes the alternative cheaper. So
yes,
it makes the alternative cheaper. If the alternative is cheaper and everybody starts going towards that way, once it increase,
and then we also creatively look for solutions, because the truth is there is no perfect solution anywhere. We just need to keep improving, keep knowing what to do, keep adapting, and we'll keep getting better results.
All right. So you've been doing this for like over 10 years, I know. Have you seen practical examples now? Like, have you seen practical examples of where this has worked? Because anytime I think of affordable housing, I always think of people owning their own homes, and I see a lot of times our grandparents own their homes, our parents own their own homes. How did they do that, and at what point did we get it wrong? A lot of times that's what I think, because you see now that people, young people nowadays, the idea of owning their own home it's a distant dream. So sometimes I like, where do you think we got it wrong? Where do you think there was a disconnect? Because our parents and grandparents, they own their own home, but at some points became difficult for us to do the same. So where do you think there was a disconnect there?
Well, like you said, economics. Then don't forget, like I said, we also moved from what we are actually used to, from what we actually have grown accustomed to also importing one or two things from the Europeans. It's not a bad thing in itself. However, it also made us a little bit lackadaisical, to a point that if you look at it, when did we start producing cement in Nigeria? At a point, cement was also being imported. So we were paying more. And the cost of importation was so sweet because Nigeria could afford it at that time. So after a while, we discovered that we couldn't keep doing that. Now that has, like you said, that has led to an increase in the cost of building. Now let's also look at the issue of development. We've been developing a lot horizontally. It's I have a small house here, I have a plot of land. So everybody wants that, let's say that estate or wherever it is occupied. We need to start looking for new places to build. You start moving away from, if you look at it, you have a central business district. It's like a concentric circle. You have your central business district at that area, then development starts moving around it. So now, because once the center is occupied, you now need to start moving outside the center. Outside the center, those are the things that lead to you have transportation issue. You have you want to live very close. Everybody wants to live very close to the city center and the like. So those are part of the issues that we have. Now, it's a compendium of issues. If you look at, like I said, if you look at the issue of transportation, do you know that it's easier to build or to own a plot in Kaduna than in Abuja. Why do we have that? Because of development. So once anywhere is developing, everybody wants to move, everybody's gravitating towards that area. So it also increases the cost. It's the law of demand and supply.
Yeah.
Now, because the city center is not infinite, at some point it gets occupied. So it means you need to keep going out. You need to keep going out. So you create new problems. From that new problems, you see you have the transportation problem. We have quite a number of problems. I feel that one of the major problems was that Nigeria stopped growing economically at some point. So we also had population explosion, but even beyond that, I felt that Nigeria stopped adapting to the population increase. We had a lot of infrastructural decay, so this has led to a huge gap between those that can actually afford and those that can't afford.
Okay. And other times, like the rural-urban migration rates really increased and caused a lot of workers things. All right. Thank you very much for. And lastly, before we go, where do you think, moving forward, how do you think you can, a lot of all these issues we've raised, how do you think we can solve some of these
I think
things?
one of the things I've been saying over the years is Netherlands is not as big as Lagos. In fact, I think it is a country. It's not as Lagos is the smallest state. I think, if I'm right, Netherlands is not as big as Lagos. But if you look at the kind of buildings that are there, you see a lot of high-rise building. Now, what does high-rise building do? Look at, instead of spreading 20 families horizontally, this is this person's house, this is this person's house, this is this person's house. Now, the cost of building a road to 20 people's houses, I could collapse that and just put it in one place. And instead of everybody having to build us along that stretch of road, I could have 20 people, 20 families living vertically. Therefore, I'm saving a little bit of space. Now, the cost of piping, the cost of sewage, everything is actually concentrated in one particular place. So now that would also help us over the years. Of course, you need government interference because it's high-rise building. But I feel that having high-rise buildings helps the situation. It helps development also. It still makes a lot of people stay within the city center instead of expanding to a point that there's too much pressure on our limited resources.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time today. It has really been very informative and impactful here with you. We hope to see you again on the pod. Thank you very much.
Thank you.